Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fed Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading, and we're joined with your host, Sergio David, and this is
Hey,
episode
Fred. You know,
XYZ.
I would actually like to look that up. I mean, we started this journey about a year ago, and it's just been going from strength to strength. Maybe we should do something fun for our, 50th, I think. Yeah.
All right.
But before that, um, before that, I'd like to chat to you about elections because
Right.
2024 is going to be a huge year for, well, globally anyway, in terms of elections. I mean, we've already had major movements in, Argentina with their new prime minister. South Africa is going to have a general election soon. And of course, the whole world will be watching come November for the US elections. So I thought today we could chat about how, elections affect the economy. So my question to you is what are some of the first signs we see during an election year on the
Okay,
economy?
so I don't know, like a normal election year or this election year? That's the big
What
question.
defines an election? A normal
Um,
election, man. I mean,
no, no,
the same two guys in America are at it again. It
yeah,
wasn't a
well,
normal election back then. I'm not even going to bring up January 6th. It wasn't an election then, and I think this year's going to be even weirder. But
so
yeah,
I
in
mean,
normal circumstance, what do we look at?
so okay, look, I mean, let's go back to 8 years ago when Trump was elected versus Hillary Clinton. Now,
Right.
Hillary Clinton, nobody likes uh, for God knows how many reasons, and she made it. She's a very wise woman. I don't take anything away from her in terms of her ability
Right.
um, to manage, and in terms of her astuteness and intelligence, she's very capable, very
Yep.
very capable. Uh, but some of her mannerisms was very much like that principal, like the one
Yeah, I
that's
think she came
controlling,
across as very antagonistic,
very
which
controlling,
brushed,
very
yeah,
like
very
you
controlling,
know,
which brushed people the wrong way. But
right.
yeah, you were saying?
So between her and Trump at the time, which was a very close election,
Yeah.
um, Trump initially won. Now Trump is a capitalist. Number one, he's an American. He's one that is all bang spankle banner. Like he's New York. He is an immigrant. He's coming from an immigrant family. Has the I don't believe that he has the personal values, but I believe that he has the macro values of American society, of America first, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, he had what to show for in terms of bringing the economy to where it is today.
Right.
Um, and I truly believe that what he set into motion is where the economy is right now. I don't believe that, and with all due respect to Joe Biden, I don't believe what Joe Biden did had changed the economy from being where it is today. Now there's a distribution of power. Like you can't uh, you can't what's the word I'm looking for? Ascribe um, everything to be you know the the president. Not the
Right.
president is not responsible for everything. You can't say, oh, the economy, the crime rate. There is a limitation to what the president can do. However, they can set in to regulatory standards, to some of the issues with the border being breached on a regular basis and letting immigrants come in, and they're allowed to vote. God help us, out of nowhere, and we don't know where these people are from. So this is a very telling time for the United States.
Yeah, I think
And
policy it's gonna come down to that. But maybe we can break this up into segments, financial market segments. So let's start with Forex. What happens to the US, dollar during an election year?
okay, so
I mean,
one
it's
second.
got to have
So
a lot of volatility,
whoa,
right?
whoa, 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 easy, easy, easy. Okay, I'm gonna. The premise of what you're saying is, Sergio,
Yep.
is that it's only elections and everything else is really
Well,
secondary or not
yeah,
related.
I think it's
However,
it's gonna be, yeah, yeah. Okay.
However, okay, we do know that we're coming off a very big inflationary
Yeah.
move in the markets over the past 2 years.
Right.
And that has been stabilized, and Powell has said that it's been stabilized. However, interest rates are going to stay higher longer. Okay, so that sets a certain tone. Okay, and also, you're also omitting the fact that when you're trading currencies, it's not just one currency, there's a counter currency as well. So
Sure.
if Europe is not doing well, if there's still destabilization in Europe
Yeah.
because of the war in Ukraine and that gets spilled over, or Norway comes into NATO somehow and Russia doesn't like it and they continue to expand some of their activities in the western part of Russia and they expand. There are so many mitigating factors here.
Right.
So, and then you got to take into, okay, that's the euro. What about the Japanese yen? What about the British pound, right? So, in terms of Forex standards, okay, we look at it from a inverse relationship to the Dow Jones to the financial markets, meaning if the dollar gets stronger, the Dow and the indices generally get weaker. However, though that correlation doesn't always follow suit, okay? It's not a rule of thumb. It is a rule, but it's not a rule of thumb. So, with that said, going into this year, knowing all this stuff, I hope that the markets stay relatively sane. And this is the biggest issue, okay? And I've been talking a long time now, okay? And this is really the biggest issue. There are going to be so many surprises between now and November 5th, which is the election, okay? That we can't even anticipate. We don't know what cat is going to be coming out of the bag to bite both candidates.
This
And
is
this is
true.
the
I
scary
mean, we're
part.
looking at a couple indictments. One on Biden's side that he's fighting off, and about 90 plus on Trump's side. But either way, these indictments could, affect the elections and, of course, voting public and the markets. It's just,
You know, I
yeah,
tell you, Sergio, I was back in the States just a month ago,
yeah, yeah,
and I met with a professional guy, really like he makes maybe, I don't know, like a really professional guy. He makes about $200,000 a week. Okay, sat down with him. He's in real estate, um, and just just speaking to people. I like to speak to people, right? And I
right.
sat down with him and I said, this is what's going on, and America's like this. He goes, "Well, I'm ready." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, you have no idea. I'm ready." I said, "Joe, what are you talking about?" He goes, "I am packed to the gills." I was packed with what? He says, "I got more ammo." And he
Oh,
starts showing
jeez.
pictures of
Do
all
you
his
know
ammunition. Now, this is a
it?
New York guy. This is not like somewhere in Texas, where I
Yeah,
would expect it. This is a normal New York, born and bred, you
yeah.
know,
To be fair, though, gun proliferation in America is,
but
everywhere.
that's
But
not the point. The point
yeah,
is that they're expecting something, and
something.
and he wasn't the only one. Went into this
Sure.
store, which was like an outdoor gooding store, and I said, and we got into talking a little bit, and so he said to me, "Yeah, I'm packed." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm ready. Like you have no idea. We're ready." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, we're
For
ready."
what?
I have no idea. They're afraid of this amendment. They take very seriously in the United States, and I think it's like a telling sign that someone is expecting something, that they know someone knows something about something. I don't know what it is.
You know, I look in South Africa. I mean, we've got one one political party which has about 40% plus, of the vote have being the ANC, and then not even a close second would be Democratic Alliance, which is about 19% of the vote, right?
And what
And
about
and then there are at least that I can think of 100 other parties. No, no lie, there's about 100 plus parties on our list. Hell, we've got a soccer party as in a party that's dedicated in terms of its political policy to change South Africa through promotion of soccer. I'm not joking. It's on the ballot, right? But I always enjoyed the fact that there is choice, there is variety. There's somebody somewhere that's going to be speaking to your voice. But when you have such a divisive two-party system like in America, it's very scary to watch from the outside. Like in South Africa, you don't get an ANC, you don't get an ANC state and Democratic Alliance state. You might get municipalities which are run by those said parties, right? But it's not like the people in there live, breathe, and die, their colors. Whereas in America, what's always fascinating is people live and breathe and die red or blue. That's it. You know? It's so scary for me to think that you can be that
I actually
divisive.
disagree. I think things, like
Like,
you look at it as only two parties, but there's three branches of government. And it's not like, where you have a party and the party elects. It's not like the European system. And I think that up until now, as long as the right and the left didn't veer so far apart from each other, it works. It works very well. And that's how I would argue, is that that's why the United States did so well for so long. Now, however, what's happening in the past year and a half? No, sorry, what are we talking about? Year and a half in the past decade is that you
yeah,
see the right and the left continue to swing further apart,
yeah,
and to the point that it's getting verbally abusive. It's
yeah.
getting
It's getting
a lot.
dangerous.
It's getting
And
dangerous.
and the sad thing is people base, your entire ideology around a political party, which for me is weird in the extreme, you know? And the sad thing is, I remember, it used to be a case of if you were right, it was a case of you want to spend more money in terms of stimulating the economy and more, towards military spending, right? And if you were on the left, it would be more into social services and less spending on the military. But they could still talk to one another. Now you got to a case where they can't, absolutely can't, and they're not. And I think also media, stokes that fire and creates that separation because it sells, right? So we live in two separate echo chambers, left and right, but nobody's talking to each other. They're talking at one another. But if I can bring this back, let's talk stocks, right? I mean, we've had, it's only February, but we've had an amazing year so far for a lot of the big, tech companies. Election year, we said you're coming off interest rates, cooling. So, that's obviously going to give a lot of people sigh of relief so they can spend more. What's going to happen to the stock market? And yes, once
So,
again, I want you to peer into Fred's magic
crystal
8 ball
ball.
or crystal ball.
So this is the thing. Like you said, it's policy. Between now, okay, and I'll section the year before November 5th and after November 5th. I believe very much, Sergio, in what
Yeah.
if situations. Now, in the markets, you got to look at it as segments. Okay, between now and the Republican primaries, it does look obviously that Trump will be the main candidate for the Republicans. Okay, Nikki Haley is way behind. Okay, she's still trying to stay in. I don't know why. DeSantis left. Now, what happens on the Democratic side? Does Biden give up? Does Biden say, you know what, I've reached my capacity and I can't move forward from here? Does someone else like Michelle Obama come in, or the governor from California? His name is
I think
News.
it's too late on the
Um,
Democratic side in any case
I don't know. I don't.
for that kind of primary. Joe's the
Um,
choice. I
well,
don't
I mean,
see
you never
I don't
know.
see Kamala putting in a bid.
Yeah, but I'm saying like I don't know. Like he's getting older, you know, and like you know he should live long and be well, but he's in his 80s.
To be fair, they are
Um,
both old, which bothers me
well,
a lot.
yeah,
I don't want to be ageist, but I think it is a problem when you have two
I
candidates that old.
I duly agree with you. I mean, I would have liked somebody in their somewhere in their 60s. I think 50s
Yeah,
is also
yeah,
too early.
yeah.
Ideally, I think 60s you're still with it together and you still have enough strength to be good. But to Trump's I mean, in terms of his stamina, he definitely like he's a strong man. He's physically a strong man.
I think he's
Um,
a very vocal man.
no, but like
I don't
there
think
were
he
some
knows.
interviews. There were some interviews with him, about his schedule on a daily basis. During the. I mean, this is going back 4 years ago. Um, during the as they do their tour around the country, and he's a busy man. He really puts in a lot of hours into work, and what's interesting though is that his base has completely changed. Um, he doesn't have the same people around him, his immediate people. So that's kind
Yes,
of
I
interesting.
think, yeah, a lot of firings, a lot of letting go, and no more Rudy Giuliani either. Um, Here's the thing, though: how much of the election is also going to be dependent on foreign policy? I mean, you're talking about two wildly different people in terms of how they
I think
handle,
foreign
everything.
policy right now. I mean, like again, I don't like you're asking a loaded question. Because Trump says if I was president, the war in Ukraine will be over tomorrow, and when he says it, he means it. And you don't have to like the guy to accept some of his policies. You know, he avoided a confrontation with Russia 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I truly believe the guy knows how to delegate in terms of his policy. Now, does that mean that Europe is going to like it? No, they probably won't,
No,
because he said
probably
this
not.
again. We flipped the bill for NATO of $171 billion, he says, and Europe, gives like 20 billion for their own protection. You know,
Yeah,
now
you
what
know,
are the
yeah.
side deals that are the benefit of it? That's another story. Um, but ultimately, I I I believe that he, you know, if you look at history, okay, the Republicans have been very strong. Okay, for example, like Reagan when he came in, the American hostages were released the day he became president, and he didn't say anything. But they kind of knew that the Republicans are very strong, whereas the
Yeah,
Democrats take a physically strong stance internationally, right? But
right.
are soft on voice, right? So it's interesting
Yeah,
that
I've always seen
he's
that
very
dichotomy.
vocal, but he didn't get into any scrimmages. Trump didn't get into any scrimmages while he was in power. Again, you don't have to like the guy, you don't have to agree with him, but I'm just looking at policy,
Yeah,
and it does
I
sound like I'm pro Trump, but at the same time, I also think that Joe Biden did a good job relatively to what environment we find ourselves over the past 4 years.
what's also going to be interesting is, you mentioned Ukraine, and in our last podcast, you also mentioned how Africa will, play a big part in, geopolitics. I think it's also going to come down to the situation in the Middle East and the two potential wars that might happen in with Venezuela and its very small neighbor, and of course,
Taiwan and
the
China.
situation with the Houthis. I'm not even looking at China. I'm just talking about
I
like
am.
active zones
I,
where America, you know, has these assets. I don't believe with China, given its record, that they'd actually invade Taiwan. I think they're much more, how can I say, subtle about their ways of taking over, and obviously everything for them is an economic driver.
but you see it
So I don't think
happening.
they're going to
Like
invade.
I don't know about invade, but you see things happening though,
Yeah, blockade, military assets being moved, but I think a more not deadly situation, but a far more globally impactful situation right now is what's happening with the Houthis. I mean, that entire, Mediterranean slash Red Sea uh, port zone is being affected, and that's a serious issue. And it's going to be, I mean, it's already escalated
not
where a
the,
few
it's
Marines
really
have
not the
died.
Houthis, it's Iran.
Yeah, let's
It's
face it,
really
it is Iran. It's
okay.
Iran.
So
But there's already been 3 American deaths. Well, 3 Marines killed,
right,
so it's already
but at the
escalated.
same time, it's the question is these proxy wars, Hezbollah going to enter the war? Um, is the other countries going to start?
Yep,
Saudi Arabia is challenged by Iran. Iran is a
yep,
very big threat to Saudi Arabia and to the entire region, and to Iran is a very powerful country. I mean, they are a lot more sustainable than many people give it to them, and it's scary. It really is scary. I mean, what
yeah.
they're because it's an
So,
ideology.
yeah, I think, going forward, we should maybe unpack that specific zone and just how it's affected, global trade. And it has. I mean, I've seen articles in terms of like how they're slowing down trade through there and increasing tariffs, and that's going to affect, everybody. It's such a bottleneck, of trade. But, if I could wrap things up, what advice do you have for traders during this year? Are we going to see a lot of volatility?
I truly believe so. Yes, and I would look at things as segments. I wouldn't think to trade the financial markets on a trending basis. Not to say that it might not trend, okay, either lower or higher. But we do find ourselves right before an election year at all-time record highs on the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq, and some of the stocks, the biggest stocks that we know, including Microsoft, including Amazon, are on their all-time highs. The banks are on their all-time highs. JP Morgan, which is the largest bank in the world, is on all-time highs. Nvidia, which has,
Please.
really been the forefront.
Testing the
Okay,
2 trillion mark.
I mean, the first time we brought it onto the podcast, it was trading at $500. Now it's at
Yeah,
$700. And
it's
so it's like,
insane.
and over the past 4 years, it went from $40 to $700. Okay,
Yeah.
talk about a missed
Just an
opportunity.
amazing company.
That was one, that is a missed opportunity. But however, I still believe that there's always opportunities in the market. That's what I love about the financial markets. You missed one, okay, there's going to be a next one. So just hang in there and look for them. So I would look at things in segments. Okay, now until the primaries, from, let's say, from May through August, and then September time is going to be a whole thing. And you also have to take into consideration there are financial indicators like the CPI, core price index, inflation, the interest rate decisions from the Federal Reserve, which is a completely separate entity. And as long as everything is status quo and wars don't start spilling over, we could definitely see a lot of activity in the market. And if they do, that's even more so that markets will be even more volatile.
And that, as they say, is a wrap. Thank you so much, Fred, for all your awesome advice and insights. To all our listeners out there, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you, Sergio.